Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But the week begins. It's a Monday. It's the 1st of July, 2024. A new month begins and the second half of the year also begins. But our stories continue to have the same aggressiveness and the same increase in number because of what is happening across the world. We'll begin with our first, and that concerns Pakistan's right to defend its soil and also the Afghan Taliban's responsibilities vis-a-vis eliminating the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or at least restricting them within the Afghan soil. We have, from us, I mean the Pakistani side, has time and again through different delegations, through different statements, requested the Afghan authorities, the Afghan interim government, to limit the terrorist or the militant activities from crossing the Afghan border and entering into Pakistan. The number of terror incidents this year alone have crossed 300, and the fact remains that most of these are concentrated in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, those that have links with the Afghan side. Although on the one side, the Afghan side also does not accept a Durand line, the Pakistani side is continuously fencing this line, and they say that 98% of this fencing is complete. This said, Doha talks are continuing also at the same time, and the Afghan Taliban delegation is there as well. But will security be part of the Doha talks? This is a question mark that we will be discussing during the first segment. Our second story concerns the US presidential elections that are going to happen on the 5th of November this year. The first presidential debate did occur between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and the way Joe Biden acted proved to or gave shivers in the spines of many Democrat. But the fact remains that despite his shaky performance in the presidential debate, a lot of Democrats are still siding by Joe Biden, who himself said once this presidential debate was over that there are always highs and lows, but then at the end of the day it all depends on how you move the country forward. Will the Democrats retain their popularity post this presidential debate? What has been happening since then? Will the incarceration of Donald Trump in different cases that are pending, that are going on, prove to be detrimental as far as his nomination for the presidency in this year is concerned? That also raises a lot of question marks, and we'll be trying to answer or understand those in our second segment. Then we'll be talking about the latest as far as the Israel-Palestine war is concerned, this conflict is concerned. Palestinian detainees have been tortured day and night in Israel's prison. This has been said by the recently released director of Al-Shifa Hospital, Dr. Muhammad Abu Salmiya. He was detained for around 8 months and was recently released. Of that also, Israel's far right national security minister Itamar Ben-Gvir calls for dismissal of the head of the Shin Bet Internal Security Service over the release of the Al-Shifa Hospital director. Israeli tanks are also advancing on the Gaza city district of Shujaiya, trapping civilians, and fighting that is also continuing in Gaza, despite the fact there has been a United Nations Security Council resolution that has been taken out some days back. No implementation of that resolution whatsoever. In fact, a total disregard by Israel as we speak. At least 37,900 people have been killed, 80,060 wounded in Israel's war on Gaza since the 7th of October. This includes 23 deaths in the last 24 hours alone, and we do not know the thousands of people who are buried under the rubble that you can also see in the pictures in the parallel window. Finally, we'll be talking about the countrywide anti-polio campaign that has begun from today to inoculate more than 9.5 million children under the age of 5, and this is beginning in 41 districts across the country. Of course, all the different districts, regions are concerned, but this is also concerning in the wake of more polio virus cases that have been found very recently. This concludes the lineup for today. Let's begin with our first story, and that concerns Pakistan's right to defend its soil. And of course, we all know about the terror incidents that have been happening in Pakistan since the last few months. Also, Pakistan has time and again requested the Afghan side to restrain the TTP from entering Pakistan or from maneuvering the different terror activities within the Pakistani soil, but it has fallen on deaf ears. The Doha talks are also going on as we speak. What will be the implication of that as far as the security of the region is concerned? We've been joined by Brigadier retired Waqar Hassan Khan. He's a defense analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. According to the South Asia terrorism portal that maintains data on terror attacks in the region, Pakistan has witnessed over 300 terror-related deaths since the beginning of this year. Dozens of Pakistani security personnel and police officials have died in various attacks that have happened across the country, but that are concentrated in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan. Last year also, Pakistan recorded a 6-year high in terrorism fatalities, with most of the attacks that were concentrated in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well. The Afghan Taliban reject the evidence of cross-border terror attacks and the reports gathered by the United Nations and research groups based in the United States indicate that the Afghan Taliban have maintained ties with the foreign militants, and we were, of course, and harboring them as well. With concrete proof that Pakistan has, Brigadier Saab, as far as the involvement of TTP is concerned, the harboring of the Afghan interim government of these TTP are concerned, how important is the responsibility of the Afghan interim government, despite all the repeated requests by Pakistan to contain TTP and other militant groups from destabilizing Pakistan? Do you think this will happen anytime soon? We can't hear you properly. There's some audio connection, and that is what is kind of making our conversation not possible for the moment. We are trying to recontact to you again. I was talking about the South Asia terrorism portal that maintains data on the terror attacks in the region. Pakistan, as per this portal, has witnessed more than 300 attacks this year alone, and the number of attacks, of course, last year was a 6-year high as far as Pakistan is concerned, with most of the attacks that were based or concentrated in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan alone. Pakistan has had concrete proofs about the involvement of the TTP in the different nefarious activities and of Afghan nationals as well, and it has provided many times these facts and figures and the proofs to the authorities concerned. This said, nothing has been done so far as the Afghan interim government is concerned. In fact, the Afghan interim government, whenever they have been asked about these terror attacks that emanate inside of Pakistan from the Afghan soil, say that this is not an Afghan concern and Afghanistan is not at all related to this, and this is a Pakistani internal issue that needs to be tackled by Pakistan internally, and it has nothing to do with Afghanistan, which seems to be very questionable or surprising, despite the fact and knowing very well that in Kabul alone are different militant or terror outfits that are being harbored openly by the Afghan interim Taliban government. There are a lot of questions also on why the Afghan interim government is continuing to harbor elements such as the TTP. Some say that the TTP has helped the Afghan Taliban before they attained their independence in 2021 or before they could form the government in 2021, and that is why they are more or less indebted to the TTP government. Others say that the TTP are in a great majority, and politically also, in order to counter other such groups or other groups in Afghanistan, the Afghan Taliban need the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan in order to sustain themselves politically or maybe militarily, so as to say. This said, the Doha talks are also going on as we speak. Doha 3, as they call it. I have different topics that are being discussed. Most important of those topics that are being discussed there are the humanitarian angles in Afghanistan, the Afghanistan delegation that is being led by Zabiullah Mujahid, who is a spokesperson of the Afghan interim government, says that they will be discussing, of course, the issues regarding the human rights situation, the humanity, the issues regarding the food scarcity and the other issues that are there. But they say all the issues concerning women or education are Afghanistan's internal issue, and they will not be discussed during these Doha talks. And of course, the fact is that there are so many other issues that are important to the world, even whether it be the Doha talks or other talks, and that include the situation of the women in Afghanistan, the situation is vis-a-vis women's education in Afghanistan is concerned, of course the economic situation also in Afghanistan, but also the security situation in Afghanistan that is creating a problem for different regional countries, especially Pakistan and also other countries, because there are so many other terror outfits that are having designs or other Central Asian countries or even China that are being harbored within the Afghan territories. Why the Afghan territories or why the Afghan interim government continues to harbor them is a huge question mark on many mind, and of course this raises a lot of issues as well concerning regional stability, concerning Pakistan's stability, and concerning global stability as well, because if you have Al-Qaeda or if you have ISIS within the Afghan domain, which means that many countries are at risk, which not only include the countries of the subcontinent, of the Central Asian region, but also of EU and the US and Canada as well. Pakistan's delegation also is in Doha, and they have had talks between the US side and the Pakistani side. What we need to also see is how the US side will also or is seeing the whole security paradigm as far as Pakistan is concerned, and whether they will or would they want to have some kind of a joint counter-terrorism strategy vis-a-vis Pakistan or vis-a-vis Afghanistan along with Pakistan, so as to curtail not only the the security problems that Pakistan is confronted with, but also curtail those elements that could prove to be damaging for the US or for the European Union or even for the Central Asian countries. Also a lot of if you look at the statistics as far as the security paradigm of Pakistan is concerned, we continue to see incidents that are happening in Pakistan as well. We all know there was a recent incident as well, a terrorist attempt at Takht Beg area of Khyber district, and our Prime Minister has said the entire nation is united to eliminate the scourge of terrorism. He also appreciated the police and the frontier constabulary for thwarting this terrorist attempt. He paid tributes to the police personnel who sacrificed their lives for the sake of the country while fighting the terrorists. And of course, we need to be indebted to these security personnel, whether they belong to our armed forces or whether they belong to our police. The fact is that they are our first line of defense, and they have been doing whatever they can in whichever capacity, even laying down their lives for the defense of the motherland, and so that we can live in peace and we can sleep soundly at night. It is because of the efforts, because of the sacrifices made by our Jawans, by our front line workers. The federal government also has approved a reinvigorated and re-energized national counter-terrorism campaign, which is known as the Operation Azmeistehkam, that symbolizes the national resolve to eradicate extremism and terrorism from Pakistan. The campaign was launched with the consensus of all the stakeholders that include the provinces, Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir, during a meeting by the Central Apex Committee on the National Action Plan that had been chaired by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Azmeistehkam, as per the details, will integrate and synergize multiple lines of efforts to combat the menaces of extremism and terrorism in a comprehensive and decisive manner. This was said by the Prime Minister's office in a recent press release. They also said that this vision for enduring stability, known as Azmeistehkam, is being erroneously misunderstood and compared with earlier launched kinetic operations like Zarb-e-Azm and Rah-e-Nijat. The previous kinetic operations had been conducted to physically dislodge terrorists from their known locations, which had become no-go areas and compromised the writ of the state. These operations required mass displacement of the local population and systematic clearance of the affected areas. There are no such no-go areas in the country, since the ability of terrorist entities or to carry out large-scale organized operations inside Pakistan. That was of course decided, and that is why the change in modus operandi as far as Azmeistehkam is concerned. Of course, Azmeistehkam is a multi-domain, it's a multi-agency, whole of the system, national vision for enduring stability in Pakistan. It is meant to reinvigorate and re-energize the ongoing implementation of the revised action plan, which was initiated after the national consensus across the political spectrum. We all remember what happened in December 2014. We've been rejoined by Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan Khan Sahab. Brigadier Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Brigadier Sahab, how important is the responsibility? This was the question that I had asked you. How important is the responsibility of the Afghan interim government in the wake of all these terror incidents that are happening from their soil in Pakistan territories, and how important is their responsibility also vis-a-vis harboring the TTP and other militant organizations within their soil?
I think it's becoming now critical, and it's beyond the issue of sharing information and sharing time, because this has been done number of time by Pakistan. I think I'll add more to it. There was a recent interview of a CIA activist or CIA operator, Mrs. Sarah Adams. This was a very popular video show, and she has disclosed certain startling things regarding Indian funding to Taliban directly, including their defense ministry, in millions of dollars, basically to incite violence in Pakistan. Then there are a number of other countries which are funding, including she even blamed the U.S. Government because she claimed that every week about $87 million are siphoned from Swiss banks to the Taliban. So I think the game is now becoming very, very complicated. I feel that Taliban too has actually become a hired gun, so it's available to the highest bidder, and a lot of supply of already that there were $7 billion plus dollars worth of weapons left by the Americans. Now, in case they are bypassing all the formal channels, and India, US, and they have even, I think, allied other neighboring countries, why they are funding Taliban is because of two reasons. One, they will not attack their interests in Afghanistan or outside, and the other is they'll play their game. So I think we'll also have to reconsider the strategy. Within Pakistan, I think azmeistehkam is very, very important, and I am surprised that some of the political parties, trying to basically make it controversial. It's basically protection of Pakistan's interest, protection of Pakistan's civilians, and of course the border, which are definitely sacrosanct. So all told, I think there is a need now to highlight that India is funding them directly, and this is by a CIA operator. She's a very senior CIA officer who also inquired about the Benghazi attack, and she has a lot of credibility. And Sarah Adams, if you listen to the entire video, so there are very, very startling, revelations. So it means that this there has to be different strategies within Pakistan and outside. And as they meet in Doha, I think they need to be confronted with this proof.
All right, well, you talked about Doha. Let's discuss Doha a little bit. In the Doha talks, the UN officials and special representatives from around 20 countries, including Pakistan and the US, are attending the meeting. Pakistan's special representative on Afghanistan, Asif Durrani Saab, met with his US counterpart Tom West yesterday in that respect. How important do you feel could be the prospect, despite the fact that you did talk about the US directly or indirectly as far as the Afghan interim government and its security paradigm is concerned, or terrorist paradigm, let's put it that way. Could there be a joint counterterrorism operation between the US and Pakistan in the wake of these terror incidents that are happening in Pakistan? Does the US also realize that the IS and the Al-Qaeda are also present within the Afghan soil?
Yeah, I think in case of fight for terrorism, I think we can always have a regional approach. And somehow I have a feeling that we'll have to fight it on our own, because if you look at the kind of funding. Now on Doha, it's very important that it's becoming an international forum. Although Taliban would try to basically get themselves recognized. And definitely the regional countries also want that borders should be secure. There's a lot of regional pressure also on Taliban. But main thing is that women's rights and other issues have been, actually kept out of, at least Taliban are not going to discuss that. I think they are going to have a separate meeting with the NGOs and civil.
Coming on the security brigade, coming to the security purpose, a lot of media outlets are saying that security is not on the agenda of these Doha 3 talks because it must have been put as a precondition for the involvement of the Afghan interim government's delegation. You remember last time they did not attend these very talks because of certain prerequisites that have been put from their side. They are of course talking of the the issues concerning their economy. This is what they will be talking about. This is what Zabiullah Mujahid Saab says. They will also say that all the issues regarding the education and women are Afghanistan's internal issues. Do not touch them. But how can Kabul be out of the woods with its neighbor when it is being blamed by Uzbekistan for harboring groups such as the ETIM and the IMU? It is being scorned by Iran for serving as a launch pad for the Jandullah attacks. It is being coming under the Western security scanner because of the attacks by the ISK, as well as the support for various factions of Al-Qaeda, and also with Tehrik-e-Taliban Tajikistan is there as well. Don't you feel that Afghanistan is more or less the perfect haven that it has created for these terrorist organizations? Shouldn't it be main agenda of the security talks, directly or indirectly, or some pressure tactic put on the Afghan delegation, it's there by the powers that be?
I think the absence of these important aspects from Doha talk also indicates the hypocrisy of the international system. And unfortunately, the regional countries are suffering, as you mentioned, whether it is Central Asian republics, Pakistan, Iran, or maybe China. But the countries which are on the outer, let's say India or US, they are basically, I would say, not really bothered about human rights, although they'll make a lot of noise on that. And that's how Taliban has kept it outside. I feel that Pakistan, like Indian delegation was the first one to engage Taliban, I think, yesterday. So it means that they are very keen to improve the relationship. And imagine these are the same Taliban against whom India has been actually sending Duru helicopters and gunship helicopters, Ashraf Ghani as well as Ahmed Karzai's government. And they were actually killing Taliban through the Indian weapon system. So it's I think, a dichotomy and part of India and the US. The other thing is regarding China. It can be a major player in that because there are definitely Chinese interest. And as per the CIA, agent, probably Bagram is becoming now strategically very important for China because they would like to keep the oil route of Iran, Afghanistan, China open. So they also have certain compulsion. But I think Chinese also realize that Chinese interests in Pakistan, like CPEC, have been hit by TTP, and definitely they have support from Taliban too. So all told, I think it's a very, very complicated situation. Unfortunately, there was a report by the CIA that even Iranians are, I'm not very sure, one has to see the veracity, they are also funding. So it means that it's becoming a hired gun. Anyone who pays the money or ransom, is comparatively safe. So it means all of the fallout is going to come on Pakistan, despite our hosting of 5 million Afghans, despite Pakistan actually supporting Taliban to get recognized diplomatically. We held their first, conference. So it means that, this concept of Islamic State and all that is just eyewash. It's basically, I would say, an enterprise which is thriving on terrorism. So that is very, very unfortunate. But that also, I think, reminds us that we need to, I think, also look at alternate options. Within Pakistan, definitely, there should be fight against terrorism. But also, I think we have to include the regional countries and engage the Afghan people who are suffering.
All right, final question to you, Brigadier Saab. What are the alternate options that we can look at? We know that we did strike back into Afghan soil a couple of months back because of the attacks that were being harbored on Pakistani soil. And now we've also heard our defense minister say to different media publications, including the BBC, that Pakistan will continue to take action against the Taliban hideouts wherever they might be. Now, what should be these options? How the relationship, if we look at it, with Afghanistan has become even more entangled and complicated with time passing. Can we uncomplicate or untangle it? What is the way forward as far as a mechanism that enables Pakistan's security?
Yeah, I think there has to be a multilateral mechanism, as I think is being pursued in the last 1.5 years. Definitely, when you're fighting terrorism inside, there's basically a red line. There's no space for that. The other is the issue of trans-frontier attacks. I think we should hold the option. Pakistan should have the options on the table. And in case, there are concrete proofs, we can always do that. But I feel that now, the kind of money which is flowing, like $87 million a week, an aircraft comes from Swiss bank, which is actually managed by US and Taliban. And then there is Indian money coming in, like millions of dollars, to the Ministry of Defense for any reasons. Definitely it is to incite, terrorism in Pakistan. Iranians are also on board, like helping Taliban, and Chinese are looking at their investments. So probably, I think, if you look at multilateral approaches, there could be a two-track diplomacy also with them. With definitely, if you look at the overall interests of Afghan people, Pakistan has a very critical role in supply of, grains, in supply of, let's say food, and of course, Afghan transit trade. And we have all never used this tool as a negative tool. So all told, I think should be a multilateral approach of engagement, plus remaining on the guard against threat of terrorism. And I think it's going to be a long fight that Pakistan has to fight before things stabilize.
And of course, Operation Azmeistehkam is a step in the very right direction as far as that is concerned. Thank you very much, Brigadier Retired Waqar Hassan Khan, Defense Analyst, to have joined us, to have discussed the Pakistan-Afghanistan complex relationship, and of course the increased uptick of terror attacks that have been emanating in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, with increased evidence that there is an involvement of the TTP and Afghan nationals as far as these attacks is concerned. Pakistan has time and again requested the Afghan authorities to curtail such the activities of the TTP and other militant organizations, but nothing has happened as of yet. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks, and let's hope that the Doha talks prove to be crucial in that. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the US presidential elections. President Joe Biden and Donald Trump recently had an altercation, not an altercation, but a discussion on a presidential debate that was held under the auspices of the CNN. A lot of question marks were raised as far as Joe Biden's performance is concerned. Donald Trump appeared to be more confident and more mature in his attitude, but there was a lot of falsehoods that were said during this presidential debate as well. To discuss that and US politics following this presidential debate, now that we are looking forward to the US elections that are coming more and more towards its fruition, and they are going to happen in the beginning of November, we've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Dr. Mark Meirowitz, political analyst, joins us from the US. Dr. Mark, thank you very much to have joined us. Our second guest is more or less a regular, but a very interesting guest as far as foreign affairs is concerned. Dr. Farah Naz, foreign affairs expert, also joins us online. Thank you to both of my guests to have joined us. I'll begin with you, Mark. Mark, the Supreme Court is expected to issue its long anticipated ruling on whether Trump can claim immunity from prosecution for at least some of his actions in seeking to overturn the 2020 election. This is supposed to happen today, US time, but of course there's a difference of time between Pakistan and the US. Chief Justice John Roberts has announced that Monday would be the last day of rulings in the current 9-month court term, with the Trump case one of the 4 yet to be decided. Trump faces a 4-count indictment for his efforts to overturn these 2020 elections that culminated in the January 6, 2021 famous Capitol Hill attack, in which a mob of his supporters sought to prevent Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's election. But time is running short for a trial to take place before this November 5 election, in which Trump is seeking to regain power. It could likely not begin, the whole trial could not begin as per the reports, say before the month of September. Are things, in your point of view, moving in Donald Trump's favor?
I had a hard time hearing it, but you know the court has just issued its decision in the immunity case, and I'm following it on the web. And the decision is that the president has absolute immunity for core constitutional powers and presumptive immunity if you're a former president. But basically the problem is that the court is sending back this case to the lower court because the Supreme Court says that the lower court never looked at the issue as to whether or not what Trump did was an official or unofficial act. So to answer your question, if I understood it, is yeah, this case is going back to the lower court. It's going to go back on appeal, back to the Supreme Court, and isn't not going to be decided before the next presidential election. I would say that is 1,000 to 0, no chance, no way. So if that was your question, they have a decision, but the problem as a lawyer, I'm reading it, and we don't know what the outcome's going to be because we don't know if what Trump did was official or unofficial. And therefore, the Supreme Court is really punting it and pushing it down for further deliberation. Interestingly, this is among the last cases the Supreme Court has decided in its term. Today is the last day of the court's term, and they're going to resume in October. So the timing is very present here. In terms of just the last point on the timing, July 11th is Trump's sentencing in the New York case. July 15th is the convention for Republicans. You have August convention for the Democrats. And Biden's debate this week was a complete meltdown for the Democratic Party, and they're desperate and they don't know what to do with themselves, whether to replace Biden, not to replace Biden, but I'm sure we're going to talk about that with my distinguished colleague.
All right. Mark, but things are moving in Donald Trump's favor. If you look at the different events that have been happening, whether it be the presidential debate, whether it be this Supreme Court decision, things are moving slowly and steadily in Donald Trump's favor. Yes or no?
I don't know, because Nikki Haley said that she's worried. Well, I don't know if she's worried, but she's mentioning that if they replace Biden with a younger contestant, a younger candidate, Trump could be in big trouble with a younger candidate. And so she's thinking maybe Trump should be replaced with a younger candidate. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal today, the Wall Street Journal, bastion of the Republican Party, they have an op-ed. Biden should withdraw, and so should Trump. So what we have in American politics now is a watershed moment where everything's up for grabs and the whole situation is teetering and tottering. That's how I see it. So the answer is it going well for Trump today? But if they replace him with a younger candidate, he could lose, and we don't know if Biden's going to be replaced. So I don't know. I want my colleagues, my distinguished colleagues, to help to figure this out. Thank you.
All right. Farah, thank you very much to have joined us. Farah, if you look at the polls in the US, the recent polls, they show Trump leading among voters who did not participate in the year 2020. This is one of the polls that has been done under the auspices of the NBCs, all taken before last week's debate. It shows a whopping 25-point swing towards Trump among voters who did not participate in both the 2020 and the 2022 elections and the midterms, compared to voters who cast ballots in the last two national elections. The question that comes to my mind is, in your point of view, will these infrequent voters that did not show up in 2020 and 2022 show up in 2024? And if so, where will the tilt be?
Thank you, Omar, for having me on your show. I will just begin from where Mark left. I think America is going through unprecedented times where we can see there is a discussion going on about a candidate who is facing lots of charges against him. But on the other side, there is a debate going on about another candidate that happens to be President Biden, whose seniority is questioned, that he is senior, and by the time if he become the next president of the United States of America, he will be 86 years of age when his term will finish. So whether he be in a position to hold his position for these number of years and being so senior, where he is struggling with his speech, with his, the way he was even debating with President Trump, that was also raised by so many analysts across the media channels. So here the question is whether we in the United States going to have a president who is facing charges, or we are having a president who is facing charges of being senior. So to me, as an analyst, I think these are something very different that we are talking about. So far, whenever there was election, we were always talking about agenda plan. We were talking about what they're bringing to the world, how they're going to make the life of ordinary Americans better.
Farah, a lot of question marks, you talk about the seniority, but the thing is that the difference between the ages of Donald Trump and Joe Biden is just 3 years. One is 78, the other is 81. So there's not much of a difference, but a whole hoo-ha is being made also about the seniority. But the fact remains that Joe Biden did not perform well at the first presidential debate. Coming back to you, Mark, in 2020's presidential election, a record 159 million Americans turned out to vote. Still, tens of millions of eligible voters did not participate. In your point of view, will some of those voters participate in these elections in 2024? What will be the criteria that will either force them to participate or push them to participate or entice them to participate this time?
Well, I'd like to pick up on my distinguished colleague's point, Dr. Naz, about agenda plan. There is no agenda plan right now. All we have is this crazy situation where we have a debate where they're comparing the golf game. I have a better golf game than you have a golf game. What does this have to do with anything? About the turnout, honestly, it's going to be amazing, but I don't know who the candidates are. So I would say until we know who the candidates are, I bet if Biden is the candidate, or there's a younger candidate, or you have Michelle Obama as a candidate, you could have the biggest turnout in American history. This election is one for the ages. It's unbelievably crazy. And I think Americans want to turn out. I would say that in addition to not having an agenda plan, as my colleague so well explains, America is failing in having an agenda plan because we don't know, have no idea right now. When we sit here today, we don't know who's going to be running for president. And around the world, they're watching this. You guys are watching it. on your expertise, and everybody's scratching their head and asking, like, what's going on with America? And that's an important question. Whatever you think about America, notwithstanding, I happen to be a great patriot for America, but the point is, America's an important country. And we have a debate, as Dr. Naz pointed out. We have Trump with his issues, and we have Biden with his issues. And all we have are issues. We need to get to the issues of the agenda plan. I think that was well stated. We need to get back to that and get that on the table and figure out where we're going. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. That's how I see it.
All right. Before I go to Dr. Farah, I'd like to ask you another question that is very specific to US politics. Steve Bannon is going to prison for a period of 4 months. Steve Bannon is the one of the forces behind Donald Trump and is also one of the forces allegedly behind what happened on the 6th of January 2021. He says he's unconcerned about missing a crucial part of Trump's campaign. As he says, quote unquote, there's a MAGA army ready to ensure the former president defeats Joe Biden and returns to the White House. What is this MAGA army all about?
Omar, here the problem is, in this scenario where we can see the allegation against Trump, they are very serious and they are challenged in the highest court and then going back to the lower court and then going back to the higher court. We don't know what's going to happen in this scenario. So anyone who had affiliation with Trump back in time when he was contesting elections, probably they will be moving back because nobody wants to bring shame to them in this this kind of bizarre situation that America is going through at this stage. So anyone who wants to support them, they need to have clarity of mind whether Trump will be allowed to contest elections in 4 months' time, which is very short time for the candidates to contest in this scenario. And if it is even Biden, how are they going to bring a change towards bringing another candidate who can stand and compete President Biden over there? So in this game, we can see that the ball is going to Biden, the ball is going to Trump. We don't know even if these two candidates will be contesting at first place or not. And all those people who were sponsoring, supporting behind the show or in front of the show, they cannot come forward and to help and extend support to all these candidates where they are not certain of their position in even 2 months' time. So nobody will come forward and support them in this scenario. They have to wait and watch who is going to be contesting, and only then they can support them. But for that, they need to understand it's Trump or it's Biden or both of them or none of them. So it's like completely, bizarre situation that we all are going through in terms of American politics.
True. Mark, I will ask two questions together to you. Firstly, I'd like your point of view on what Steve Bannon represents as far as Donald Trump is concerned. And now that he's going for a period of 4 months to prison, he says he was not going to really not miss this part of Trump's campaign because he says, quote unquote, that the MAGA army is going to be there to ensure that Joe Biden is overturned and that Donald Trump takes the presidency in these next elections. What is the MAGA army? How important is the role of Steve Bannon? Is the first part of my question. The second part of my question concerns the Massachusetts Secretary of State, William Galvin, who speaks about concerns over public distrust in the election campaign. He talks about the twists and turns, developments in the social media, misinformation, AI, all these things that we have seen develop and the effect they can have on the reluctance of people to accept an election result. I'd like your answer on these questions.
Well, on Bannon, I mean, that one, is a timing factor because Bannon was accused in connection with January 6th committee. They asked him for documents in the House. He wouldn't give them, so he's in contempt of Congress. And he could have gone to prison right away and served his 4 months, but he put it off, and now he's actually going to prison right in the middle of the campaign. So that was a big timing error because I think Bannon is kind of the brains, if you will, if you think that's a valid point, behind Trump. So the MAGA army, now I don't know that there's no MAGA army. I mean, but what you do see is if you watch the rallies, I would call that the MAGA, if there is such a thing, constituency of Trump. And that's a very, very active and enthusiastic constituency. And I would add the following point. The Democratic Party is completely clueless to understand why anybody would ever vote for Donald Trump. And they better figure it out soon, or no matter who they put up, Biden or Newsom or Michelle Obama or Kamala Harris, they're going to lose, because it's Hillary Clinton's view that anybody who votes for Trump is a deplorable. But I could tell you something. I know people who are deplorables. Deplorable? That's a really very uppity and very arrogant point to talk about people, that they're deplorable if they vote for the other candidate. So the Democrats have been clueless all along. And now with Biden being put forward and with a performance like this at the debate, and now they're blaming the advisors. The advisors messed up. They overprepared him. It wasn't correct. They're doing anything they can to, avoid the big question. Is Biden capable of running for office or holding office? So what we have is, when you say the MAGA, I mean, Trump's constituents are there. Trump did very well in the debate because Biden didn't do well. Now, about the misinformation, disinformation, I do agree with the point that we have that. America is highly polarized between the Democrats and the Republicans, and between Trump and Biden, or whoever it is. And it's only going to get worse. We see it more and more now, and especially with the latest developments with the debate. So I don't think it's going to get any better, but I sure hope it will somehow. But I don't really know the solution, to be candid.
All right, Dr. Farah, Joe Biden says on Friday he intends to win the presidential election in November, which was, of course, a day after his performance at the presidential debate. He says, and I quote, "I intend to win this election." He was saying that at a campaign in rally in North Carolina. Does the voter confidence still remain in him as per your point of view after his first presidential debate, or will it be resuscitated because of his campaigns that will follow the presidential debate that seem to be a disaster as far as he is concerned? Dr. Farah, can you hear us?
Well, if you look at, yes, I can hear you. All right, so if I hear your question properly, President Biden performed not so well in the latest debate, and the reason for that was there was in comparison to that, President Trump was doing very well. But I would say credit goes to the people, the moderator, who were muting the mic, because if the mic was not muted, that probably would have showed the real picture of Trump over there as well. So President Biden, there is this issue of his age. He's not doing well in terms of the way he was debating with President Trump. But President Trump sounded very shrewd and sharp because the mic was muted, and President Biden was struggling with his speech. And the numbers, the facts that he was providing, they were most of the time not up to the mark. So all of this made somehow President Trump more acceptable, not in terms of that he can contest the election or whatever, but in terms of presidency and the debate, he was much better, doing much better in comparison to Biden. But over the issue of the no voting confidence and thing, based on his performance, yes, it can have an impact on his performance, because throughout his candidature, throughout his presidentialship, there was the issue of his performance. Every now and then, his age was coming in, that he is not doing well, he's not capable of sustaining his position, his office, because he is aged. But is this the first time that America is having an aging president in office? And is he really that aged that he cannot perform well? We have to look into those numbers as well. Where President Trump is also not that young in comparison to President Biden. By the next election, if President Biden wins, he will be 86 by the end of it. But President Trump will be 82 by that as well. So we don't see any huge difference between their age, but performance-wise, we need to see based on the agenda that they are bringing to us. And what they are promising to their people. Is it about immigration? Is it about the inflation? Is it about the jobs? Is it about the citizenship protection and all of that? Well, if they promise anything as such, that can protect their position and their enrollment for the next election. But first, we need to sort out and just look into the President Trump cases and the issues of President Biden that he is going through at this moment.
All right, all right. Last question to you, Mark, and that is also twofold. I intend to win this election, Biden says. Will he be able to change the voter perspective post his presidential debate? B. Alan Richman, the historian who has correctly forecast the results of 9 out of the 10 most recent presidential elections, says that debate performance is not a criteria that determines the outcome of an election in the US. What's your take on that? Do you feel this time Alan Richman will also be able to predict who wins the 2024 elections?
You know, you talk about age and Lichtman, but, you know, Ronald Reagan was no young fish. He was an old guy, but you know what? He was a fantastic communicator. And you know what he did, which was very good? He delegated. He spent his time delegating. He didn't, and that was the problem with Biden. He over-prepared. It's true. No matter who you blame, he had too much information in his head. He's the president. He comes on and he says, I'm the president, Donald, and I run the country, and you don't, and all of that. He didn't do that. So he did very poorly, but more importantly, he wasn't a good communicator, and he didn't show his capacity to lead, and that he could have done. And you can blame anybody you want. And by the way, you mentioned North Carolina, which you were both speaking about. You know, who is the real Joe Biden? Is it the Joe Biden of the debate who was unable to put a few words together? Or was it the Joe Biden in North Carolina who was zesty and energetic and shouting to the crowd, and the crowd is shouting? I think we need to know the answer to that. But debate performance, yeah, there've been a lot of, that's been another one. They said, well, look, Obama didn't do well in the first debate, and look, he became president. And John Fetterman, who I really like, I think he's a great guy, and he's been very challenged. He said, I didn't do well in the debate, and I have all kinds of issues. Yeah, but the point is, I think has been discussed by my distinguished colleague, he's had this problem all along, except it never came to the fore so markedly. When he was on that debate stage, the whole American people saw once and for all that this is a big problem. And actually, it's amazing. Trump looked so good. He looked so, you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. He looked really great compared to Biden. So it was a skewed situation. I go back to Reagan. Reagan is the great paradigm of leadership Republican leadership in this country. And I think, to be very candid, neither Trump nor Biden reached the level of a Reagan. They need to communicate and lead and do a job that has integrity. And that's the standard that has to be here. And blaming the debate and debate one, by the way, is there going to be another debate? Who's going to be the candidate? If it's Newsom, will they have one? So I think today we've had great speculation, and I've enjoyed the discussion, but we haven't solved anything. But we do know that there's a lot of questions.
A lot of questions, and these questions will only be answered with time. Thank you so very much, Dr. Mark Meirowitz, political analyst joining us from the US, and of course, Dr. Farah Nas, our leading analyst, joining us also to talk about the US presidential elections, post this election presidential debate that occurred between the two incumbents. Let's see what these elections have in store for us in the coming weeks. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the Palestine-Israel war continues. Palestinian detainees have been tortured day and night in Israeli prisons. This has been said by the director of the Al-Shifa Hospital, Dr. Muhammad Abu Salamiya, who has been released after months of his capture by the Israelis. This said, the number of casualties continues to increase. 37,900 people have been killed, 80,060 wounded in this war that continues to destabilize or de-strengthen or completely eliminate slowly and steadily the Palestinian hope or the Palestinian numbers with every passing day. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, a new polio vaccination campaign that is hoping to inoculate more than 9.5 million children under the age of 5 has begun in all the different districts of Pakistan. This comes on the back of 3 cases that were reported from Balochistan and Sindh last week, taking the total number of cases since the start of the year to 8. This house-to-house campaign is going to begin in 16 districts of Balochistan, 11 districts of KP, 8 districts of Sindh, 5 districts of Punjab and Islamabad. I hope all the parents will comply and will, of course, have their children under the age of 5 inoculated with the polio vaccine. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.